They demolished my workshop while I was out buying screws. No warning, no phone call, just a chainsaw crew, a garbage bin, and a note from the HOA taped to what was left of my workbench. Before you watch full story, comment down your country name, also subscribe the channel. I bought this place 6 years ago. Cash deal, no mortgage, no questions. It wasn't much at the time: cracked driveway, beat up siding, overgrown yard that hadn't seen a mower in a decade. But it sat right on the edge of the neighborhood, backed up against a stretch of woods that nobody cared enough to claim. That was the whole point. I didn't want community pools or potlucks or friendly waves from neighbors I'd never trust. I wanted distance. I wanted a place that didn't need explaining. The workshop was the first thing I built, not the house. That could wait. It wasn't fancy, just a lean-to off the side of the garage with a corrugated steel roof, some old scaffolding, and shelves I welded myself. That pine tree behind it kept it shaded even in July, and the slope of the hill caught the breeze just right. I could spend 8-10 hours out there working on busted outboards, rotten transoms, half-sunk John boats that no one else bothered fixing. I had a rhythm: shop by day, grill at dusk, silence at night. I didn't go to HOA meetings, never needed to. I paid the dues, kept my trash off the curb, never made noise, never parked in the wrong direction. Nobody said a word to me for 5 years. Not a complaint, not a knock. I wasn't part of their wine and cheese committee, and they weren't part of my life. Then Marcus Webb got voted in as HOA president. Ex-military, big hands, small smiles. He'd moved in 3 years back after his second divorce, said he wanted to give back to the neighborhood. Within 2 months he had security patrols, sidewalk inspections, and a beautification initiative that meant if your yard didn't look like a brochure, you were getting fined. Suddenly I was getting notes about unregistered equipment in view from public roadways, meaning my boat trailer. Then one about my roof color. Then the hedge I trimmed too low. But the one that made me stop ignoring him was taped to my shop door. Red ink, bold letters. Unauthorized structure. Remove immediately. That pine-shaded lean-to had stood for 6 years, built with my hands on my land, and Marcus wanted it gone. The first time I realized Marcus wasn't just another clipboard clown was about a month after that red notice showed up. I came home from picking up some marine epoxy to find 2 orange flags staked into my yard, right along the gravel edge by my shop. Neon plastic flapping in the wind like I was about to have a utility line drilled through my ribs. I stood there holding a paper bag of bolts and stared at the flags for a solid minute, thinking maybe they'd screwed up the address. But nope. My house number was spray painted right on the curb in fresh white. Next day I got a letter in the mail. Not a normal envelope, mind you, one of those thick manila bastards, hand-delivered by some HOA lackey in a reflective vest. Inside was a formal notice of visual encroachment. Visual encroachment. Apparently, my workshop was obstructing the uniform sightlines of the community and undermining property cohesion. That's word for word. I read it 3 times before I stopped laughing. Then I flipped to the back and saw the fine, $350 due in 10 days. Attached was a photo someone had clearly taken from halfway down the block, long lens zoomed in right between 2 mailboxes, trying to make it look like my shop was some kind of bunker. I didn't pay it. I didn't respond either. I figured, all right, this is just HOA chest thumping. Let them huff. The structure's on my land, fully behind my house, invisible from the street unless you're playing sniper in a tree. There's no way they're dumb enough to actually escalate over a glorified tool shed. I underestimated Marcus. 3 days later, I wake up to find that someone, I'm guessing the same guy with the camera, had come onto my property at night and slapped a sticker on my workshop door. Bright yellow, reflective, just like a tow notice. Violation and escalation. Phase 2, final warning. Phase 2 of what? This wasn't a damn video game. I tore it off and chucked it into the trash, but something in my gut shifted right then. Marcus wasn't just testing boundaries, he was crawling over them. And he wasn't doing it through proper channels. He was doing it the way guys like him always do. Slowly, quietly, and just legal enough to keep you spinning your wheels while he gets what he wants. That's when I started paying attention. The next hit came without a sound. No knock, no letter this time, just silence. And then I noticed the mailbox. It was gone. The post was still there, jagged and splintered like someone had hit it with a truck or a bat, but the box itself? Vanished. Not in the ditch, not down the road, just gone. In its place was a temporary plastic unit, zip-tied to a steel rod and planted crooked in the dirt like an afterthought. I thought it was vandalism at first. Maybe some drunk teenager with a grudge against aluminum. But then I saw the sticker, HOA property tag, laminated and stamped. I called the number listed at the bottom and got transferred 3 times before some clerk told me the original mailbox had been removed due to non-compliance with neighborhood visual standards. Apparently, the black paint was chipped beyond acceptable threshold. Their words. My mailbox had a chip, so they ripped it out. That one stung more than I expected. I'd built that box with my brother back when he was still breathing. Bolted it myself, little nameplate and everything. I didn't say any of that on the call, I just hung up. But it sat heavy. Couple days later, I wake up to what sounds like a damn lawn mower right outside my bedroom window. I step out back and there they are, HOA landscape volunteers. 2 of them in matching safety vests, hacking branches off the pine with an electric pole saw like they were trying to prove something. My pine. The one shading my shop. I shouted. They waved like I was some happy neighbor bringing coffee. One of them called out, trimming for overhead clearance, safety protocol. I told them to stop. Told them it was private property. One of them just shrugged and said, we were told the canopy extended into communal airspace. Communal airspace. That was a new one. They left eventually, tossing broken limbs into the bed of a rusted pickup. I stood under what was left of the pine, half its shade gone, branches butchered, and realized this wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. And Marcus? He never showed. Never spoke to me directly. Just little pieces of him, flyers, stickers, clipboard cowboys doing his work. He didn't need to shout. He just needed me isolated. And it worked. I stopped getting waves from neighbors. One guy I used to lend tools to wouldn't even look at me anymore. I'd walk past folks at the community center and get that tight smile, the one you give someone who might explode. Marcus was painting me as the problem, the recluse, the one guy too stubborn to play along with the good of the neighborhood. The cherry on top? They find me again, this time for unsecured equipment. What was unsecured? The dolly I kept next to the garage, the one those same landscaper clowns had moved to get to the branches. That's when I stopped laughing. I started documenting. Every notice, every timestamp. Photos of my property from every angle, every morning. If they wanted to push this, fine. But I wasn't going to be the guy who rolled over and painted his house beige just to make Marcus feel important. Not a chance. At first, I figured I'd try the civil route. Just once. Not because I thought it would work, but because I needed it on record. For me. So nobody could say I didn't try. So later, when I burned the whole thing down, metaphorically and legally, I'd know I gave him a chance. I showed up at the HOA office. This converted room in the clubhouse that smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. Empty chairs, faded community board, a little American flag duct taped to a pencil cup. There was a desk with a bell that didn't ring. 10 minutes later, some guy named Kenny shuffled out from the back with crumbs in his beard and a volunteer badge hanging from a shoestring lanyard. Looked like he got lost on the way to a gas station. I told him who I was. Told him about the fines, the stickers, the fact that strangers cut into my damn tree. He blinked twice and said, I'm just part-time, but I think Mr. Webb is out of office hours for the week. I asked when Marcus was available. Kenny scratched his neck and said, you'll want to email him or come to next month's general meeting. That's when concerns get addressed. Right. Next month. Meanwhile, more fines pile up and my tools sit rusting in a half-shaded wreck of a workshop. So I emailed. Kept it professional. No threats, no cussing. I laid it all out. The bogus violations, the unapproved removal of a structure on what I believed was private land, the unauthorized landscaping. I even attached a map showing the tree's location and a snapshot of the original HOA boundary map from my closing packet. 2 days later I got a response. Not from Marcus, from someone named Janine, the Community Compliance Director. No last name, no phone number. The email started with, hello Mr. Rohr, we appreciate your passion for the community. That's when I knew I was screwed. She went on to say that all actions taken were within the scope of HOA policy and in the interest of community safety and cohesion. Said any further disputes could be submitted through the official HOA dispute portal. A link that led to a dead page with a 404 error. So I printed the email. I printed the map. I printed the HOA handbook and highlighted the parts they were clearly ignoring. I put it all in a folder and showed up to the next board meeting. They made me wait 48 minutes through budget updates, water usage reports, and a full 10-minute debate about whether the community center needed greener light bulbs. When I finally got to speak, I held up the photo of my cut-down tree and said, I'd like to know who gave the order to enter my property with tools and remove a structure that's been standing for 6 years. Marcus didn't even look up from his papers. He waited till I finished, cleared his throat like he was about to recite a menu and said, "We're just enforcing the standards that the community voted on. If everyone made their own rules, this wouldn't be a neighborhood, it'd be chaos." Then he smiled. He smiled and someone in the back actually clapped. Not loud, just once or twice. Enough to let me know exactly where I stood. After the meeting, I tried to talk to Marcus in the parking lot. He lit a cigarette, leaned on his truck and said, "You think you're being singled out? You're not. You just stuck out long enough for someone to notice." Then he got in and drove off. That was my peaceful attempt. Last one. The twist didn't come with a bang. It came with a coffee stain and a casual conversation at a gas station. I was grabbing a can of diesel for the generator when I ran into Marcy. Woman in her 60s, retired surveyor, used to live 2 streets over before she downsized and moved into town. I hadn't seen her in a while. She saw the HOA sticker still stuck to the side of my truck window and raised her eyebrows. "You still fighting with Marcus?" she asked, half smirking. "Trying not to," I said. "They cut down my damn tree and trashed my shop." She let out a low whistle, shook her head. Then said something that made me freeze mid-wipe at the pump. "Strange, considering you're not even technically part of the HOA anymore." I asked her to repeat that. Slower this time. She explained, lots like it was common knowledge, that when the neighborhood was first zoned, the original HOA boundaries only included certain parcels on the west side. Mine was right on the line. Technically speaking, a narrow strip of undeveloped buffer land behind my property had once separated the HOA lots from a city-owned right-of-way. According to her, there was a whole legal thing 10 years back when the city sold off that strip and the HOA made a play to annex several lots quietly, including mine. But the catch? They never filed the revised map properly with the county. The HOA thought they expanded. The county still had the old map. I asked Marcy if she had anything on paper. She just laughed and said, "Honey, I surveyed half this county in the 80s. I don't throw away anything." 3 hours later, I was sitting at her kitchen table while she dug through an old metal filing cabinet and pulled out a folded plat from 2009. Complete with signatures, city stamps, and handwritten parcel codes. Sure enough, my lot was just outside the registered HOA boundary. And the annexation? Never finalized. The paperwork was drafted, but it lacked the required sign-offs from at least 75% of affected homeowners, something they'd never gotten. Which meant Marcus and the HOA had been issuing me fines, citations, and notices without legal authority. And cutting down my tree? That wasn't just overreach. That was destruction of private property by a body that didn't even govern my land. It got worse. I cross-referenced the document number on the map with the county record site. Took a while, but eventually I found it, scanned copy buried in an old database. And at the bottom of the file? A name. Marcus Webb, signed as acting president of the HOA 2 years before he was officially elected. He'd forged the annexation paperwork and backdated it. That wasn't a policy dispute anymore. That was fraud. That was criminal. And suddenly this wasn't just about a tree or a workshop or a couple $100 in fines. This was about burning Marcus's entire little empire to the ground, legally, publicly, and permanently. The second I saw Marcus's name on that annexation file, backdated, unauthorized, arrogant as hell, something in me clicked over. No more emails. No more appeals. No more playing it straight with people who were smiling while they gutted my property. I didn't get angry. I got quiet. That kind of quiet you settle into when you've already decided how it's going to end. First thing I did was scan every page of that plat Marcy gave me, then double-check it against current county records. My parcel still sat outside the official HOA boundary. On paper, they never owned jurisdiction over me. Then I pulled every letter that HOA had sent me over the past year, violations, fines, citations, threats, and stacked them beside the map. All of it looked official. All of it had that smug little HOA header. And all of it was fake. After that, I dug through my garage for my old camera system backup drive, the one I hadn't touched since the day they cut the tree down. It still worked. I pulled the footage. There they were, 3 men with tools, no badges, no permits, walking onto my land in broad daylight and taking apart what I'd built. With Marcus standing 10 feet back, arms folded like he was posing for a photo. That was the footage I needed. That was the last nail. I sent everything, the footage, the forged annexation docs, the full violation history, to an old buddy of mine from the military, Greg Tate. Now he's a land use attorney upstate. The kind of guy who gets a courtroom quiet with 2 sentences. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told him exactly what happened. He called me within the hour. His first words? "You're sitting on a live grenade. Let's pull the pin together." We drafted the complaint that night. Not just a lawsuit for property damage, a formal legal challenge to the legitimacy of the HOA itself. If we could prove they were issuing penalties beyond their chartered authority, that meant everything they'd done was invalid. Even better, if I was never technically part of the HOA, I could sue for every cent I'd paid in dues retroactively. 6 years worth. But I didn't want just money. I wanted exposure. So I reached out to a local reporter girl named Lena Morales who runs a digital column on small-town corruption. I kept it simple, sent her 2 things. A clip of the workshop being dismantled, and the forged HOA boundary map with Marcus's signature circled in red. Her response was 3 words, "Can I come tomorrow?" Perfect. While Greg prepared the lawsuit, I started putting together the presentation. Not for a courtroom, not yet. For the next HOA board meeting. Their rules said any homeowner or affected resident could request time on the agenda. I didn't even bother asking. I just submitted a notice of legal action, and attached a summary of the forged annexation claim. Then I put flyers on every mailbox in the neighborhood. Did the HOA ever actually have authority over your lot? Come find out. I wasn't just coming for Marcus. I was going to walk into that room, put everything on a screen, and set fire to the lie he'd built, brick by brick. And this time when he smiled, I'd be ready to smile back. The meeting was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, the usual HOA circus. But this time the parking lot was packed by 6 o'clock. Folks who normally sent their spouses or skipped entirely were standing in groups, holding copies of the flyer I'd printed on my garage inkjet. Some had highlighted parts. One guy even brought a lawn chair. I walked in with my laptop under one arm and a thumb drive in my pocket like it was a scalpel. Lena, the reporter, was already inside, sitting in the back with a small tripod and a lapel mic clipped to her jacket. She gave me a nod, no smile, no wink. Just a nod. Serious. Marcus was already seated at the head table, flanked by the usual parade of yes-men. He didn't even look at me as I passed, just tapped his pen and shuffled papers like he was reviewing state secrets. They went through the usual motions: finances, landscaping, pool hours. Blah blah blah. All background noise. No one cared. People weren't there to hear about fertilizer budgets. When it was my turn, I stepped up and plugged in the laptop. Projector screen flickered on. I opened the folder labeled Jurisdictional Overreach, and clicked on the first slide. The county's official HOA boundary map. My parcel clearly outside the shaded zone. I didn't say a word at first. Just let it hang there. Then I spoke. "That's your authority line. This is my property. Any questions?" Silence. I moved to the next slide. The annexation document Marcus signed 2 years before his term started. No official stamps, no county filings, just a typed PDF with forged consent signatures and Marcus's name in black ink at the bottom. This document was never filed, was never legal. Yet this is the basis for every violation, every fine, every unauthorized entry onto my property. You've been enforcing rules where you never had the right to. Someone in the back let out a low, "Jesus Christ." Then came the video. I queued up the footage from the day they destroyed my shop. 3 men in HOA vests, saws, splinters. Marcus's truck visible in the background, engine idling. When the saw hit the roof beam, I paused the video and zoomed in on Marcus's face, arms crossed, watching. Then I turned to the room. This was not enforcement. This was trespass. This was destruction of private property based on a lie. And if he did it to me, he can do it to any one of you. It hit harder than I expected. People started murmuring. Someone stood up and asked how to check if they were actually in the HOA boundaries. Another asked about retroactive fines. One woman said she'd paid over $3,000 in violations in the last 2 years and wanted every penny back. And then, for the first time all night, Marcus finally opened his mouth. "This is a misunderstanding. Those maps are outdated. Our annexation process." I cut him off. "The county says otherwise. The law says otherwise. And starting tomorrow, my lawyer will say otherwise in court." He tried to regain the room, raised his voice. Something about community values and bad actors sowing division. But it was too late. He didn't sound strong. He sounded panicked. One of his own board members leaned in and whispered something. Marcus's face dropped. Someone called for a vote right there on the floor, to suspend HOA enforcement actions pending legal review. The motion passed by a landslide. Another motion was raised to remove Marcus as president, effective immediately. It passed too. He stood up slowly like someone had just taken away his spine. Walked out without a word, no folder, no eye contact. As he passed me, I looked him straight in the face and said, You should have left the tree alone. He kept walking. Outside, folks gathered around Lena. She was already uploading the story to her paper's site. Title was short and sharp: HOA president ousted after forging control over private property. I didn't say much. Just packed up my laptop, nodded to a few neighbors who finally saw me as something other than a problem, and left. I'd walked into that meeting with two goals: take back what was mine, make sure Marcus never got to touch it, or anyone else's land, again. Done and done. It didn't take long. By the next morning, Lena's article was already spreading. Not just locally, it got picked up by a regional outlet. Before noon, I had 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize and a voicemail from a local radio station asking if I wanted to share my side of the neighborhood uprising. I deleted it. I wasn't interested in interviews. I wasn't trying to become some HOA fighting celebrity. But I wasn't about to hide from it either. The real show started at the emergency town council meeting 2 days later. See, the HOA's fake annexation stunt didn't just screw me, it reached into city records, altered tax designations, and affected zoning boundaries for multiple homes. That caught the city's attention fast. Clay Rohr getting steamrolled was one thing. Clay Rohr dragging a stack of forged filings into public record? That was another. I showed up to that meeting with Greg, my attorney, and a binder full of everything: the original plat maps, the fake expansion documents, the video, the email chain, copies of fines. The mayor opened the floor with a tight face and said, "It appears we have a situation involving misrepresentation of jurisdiction by a local HOA. That's putting it politely." Greg spoke calmly, clearly. Cited case law, read exact clauses from the HOA's own charter. The crowd, city officials, reporters, residents, sat dead silent as he walked them through the entire scam Marcus had run quietly over years. When it came my turn, I didn't get fancy. I held up the HOA's final violation notice, the one they taped to the busted workbench after they trashed my shop, and said, "This is the letter they left me. No phone call, no hearing. Just destruction. And now you know they never had the right." A woman from the back asked how many homeowners were affected. I answered, "We don't know yet. But I guarantee this wasn't just about me." By the end of the meeting, the city council voted unanimously to launch a full audit into the HOA's operations. Marcus was formally referred to the district attorney's office for potential fraud charges. That night, someone posted the full HOA meeting video online. The one where I showed the footage and dropped the documents. It hit 100,000 views in 2 days. Comments poured in: "This guy's a legend. My HOA just fined me for hanging a flag. Watching this gave me hope." Finally, someone fought back the right way. Even got a message from a former HOA board member from 2 neighborhoods over: "Wish we had someone like you when our president went off the rails." But here's the part that really stuck with me. It wasn't the articles or the legal action or even Marcus's quiet disappearance. It was walking through the neighborhood that weekend on my way to the hardware store and seeing people finally make eye contact again. One guy, the same one who used to cross the street when he saw me, walked up, handed me a 6-pack and said, "Should have stood up with you sooner." Sorry I didn't. I told him, better late than never. Word was Marcus packed up and left town. House went up for sale a week later. Motivated seller, some said. He moved in with his daughter out in Tempe. Others said he lawyered up and tried to settle quietly. I didn't follow up. Didn't care. What mattered was this: everybody saw it. Public, clear, on the record. And he didn't get away with it. And that's what made it real. It's quiet now. Not just the kind of quiet you get after a storm, but the kind that settles in when the air is finally clear. No more sticker warnings on my door. No more HOA patrols cruising past the house like I was some kind of threat. The new board? Yeah, they actually held an election this time, sent a letter a few weeks back, officially confirming my property's exclusion from their jurisdiction. Simple envelope, no nonsense. I framed it and hung it in the garage right above my bench. The spot where my workshop used to be is leveled now. I cleared the broken beams myself, kept the metal hardware, burned the rest. Never rebuilt it. Not because I gave up, I just didn't need it like I used to. I built a new structure. Better than before. Deeper into the lot, well outside even the city's imaginary lines. No cameras pointed at it, no clipboards involved. Just mine. That new pine sapling I planted is doing all right. Won't replace the old one. Nothing could, but it casts a little shade in the morning and that's enough for now. I sit out there sometimes. No radio, no phone. Just the creak of the wind and the branches and the smell of sawdust. Folks in the neighborhood started talking again. Some come by with questions: "How'd you do it?" Or, Can you help me with this thing our board's pulling? I help when I can. Not out of some moral crusade, just feels right to pass it on. I don't go to HOA meetings. Never will. But I hear they're shorter now. Less yelling, fewer fines. More folks showing up who used to stay home. That's a win in my book. As for Marcus? Far as I know, he hasn't come back. Probably won't. I like to think he's somewhere quiet too, thinking about how it all fell apart. Maybe even wondering how a guy who kept to himself, fixed boats, and minded his business ended up being the one to take it all down. Truth is, I never wanted to fight. But I wasn't going to let someone walk onto my land, tear apart what I built, and tell me it was for my own good. That's the thing about peace. Sometimes you've got to punch through the noise to earn the silence. And now it's real.